Welcome to Freelancers Coffee Break Podcast. I'm your host, Ali, and with my co-host, Mehmet, we're going to talk about freelancing, all the ins and outs, and everything about business and how we do it. So, what are we going to talk about today?
Creating long-term clients, in short.
Yeah, creating long-term clients, making this sustainable, turning your freelancing career into a sustainable model.
Yeah.
It's the key.
Yep.
Sure.
Lots of people start freelancing. I know you didn't start with a corporate job, but lots of freelancers have a corporate life, and then they say, "Okay, I don't want a boss anymore." But in freelancing, you have many bosses. It's like that. But the nice thing about being a freelancer is that you can fire your bosses if you want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you have more bosses, it's easier to fire a boss that you don't like anymore. But
fast forward, you have all these clients and you're making dollars. Then you have this pressure of like maybe you're not afraid that you're gonna get fired. Like you have no concerns because you have multiple clients who are like ongoing for years. But then you have this reputation to keep, because like if you mess up, then your reputation is going to be messed up. And this is like in every industry, especially in the US, they're all small circles, like people somehow know each other. And
you're definitely right on that. What I'm trying to tell is that people, you have all these bosses. People go on freelancing not to have bosses, but in fact, your clients are your bosses, and you want to keep a long-term relationship with them because the more you have, the more freedom you have. And especially at the start, if you join Upwork and so on, if you have one client, it's not possible to maintain a good business. But if you have so many clients who, whenever they have a new job, they come to you, then it starts piling up and you suddenly start having a sustainable business because all these different businesses coming up without you looking for it. They just message you.
Yeah, they just come to you at some point. And like, for example, last year, I didn't have any plans to grow this year. But just like you said, some clients came and some of the job has extended to a bigger capacity, and they just opportunities show up. You just have to just put the work in, network, and keep people happy, I guess. Like that's the key.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you have too many clients, you can decide if you want to decrease the size. For example, I'll increase my rates, and so the ones that are at the bottom may leave, or
ask for a raise.
Ask for a raise. Yeah. If you don't like, for some reason, any client, you just can have a nice conversation and say, I'm too full at the moment, too busy at the moment. Maybe we can work in the future, but I won't be able to help you at this moment in my business, for example.
Unless you give me this tremendous amount of money and make me happy. So, that's always, money always wins, I guess, at the end of the day.
I think in most cases, you're right. Maybe 90%, but there are some cases that you just don't like the guy, it happens. Whatever they offer, either they did something or, they insulted or some way you decide that you don't want to see that person any longer, independent of the amount you make out of that person.
Yeah, that's all right. So what should we do? So how do we, Mehmet, keep our clients happy, and how do we make our freelancer careers turn into something sustainable? And what are the steps that one should take?
So I think the first step would be at the start, when you first interact with the client. You either they contact you directly through referral, or some you met them through Upwork or some other freelancer platform, and you set clear expectations. You, in detail, you tell them what you will be able to deliver. Sometimes if you overpromise, it's a big problem.
I disagree. I
Yeah,
disagree with you
yeah.
because for me at least, it was like, yeah, for sure, I can do it, and then you find a way to do it. So it's just, it's good to guarantee some things, but it's good to know that you can do it, but you got to challenge yourself. You just got to find a way to do it, or get it done by somebody else. Like, there are a million ways to.
You may be right. I don't know your sound engineering business, but in my line of business, people ask so many crazy things. For example, they send me it happened before. They send me street cam video or a photo and ask me to read the plate, for example. You say, this is impossible. It doesn't work like in the movies. You cannot unblur.
Yeah, but simply, I get those kind of like offers, these like stupid, and probably like really not, good paying offers.
Sometimes they are ready to pay a lot, but it's just not possible,
I tell them, I try, when that happens, I try, and if it doesn't work, I'm like, man, like, this is technically not possible, so you better just not, maybe not believe anybody if anybody says this is possible, at least, like, in my knowledge. But still, like, you just decline, or you just send them away. And
so when I first start, I always try to tell them, okay, I'll be delivering you these. I try to be as clear as possible, because sometimes it happened to me before. There has been a misunderstanding. I'll be delivering you these. I don't deliver you my PSD files, working files. I deliver you PNG file, JPEG file, and you will be accepting this after you revise the first version. I won't deliver you the high quality image, or I'll deliver you the high quality image.
You're taking precautions. You're taking precautions. This is something different, because like, I get also, for example, I say I had to clarify what like, when I say 30 minutes of audio, this dollars, 45 minutes of audio, this dollars, blah blah. I have to give like a range of time and price. So I have to be very clear about that, because then they go on to
keep on asking.
They just like, if you fix the price at a certain point, then you have to keep it high, because like, you never know. They say 30 minutes, but then here comes an hour-long interview. So that's like double the job. So I get that. This is really important, by the way.
Also, you promise on a certain time period. I usually add 2 days or 1 day minimum to my deadline. So I'll say, okay, 3 days after you activate the project, delivery date.
Yeah.
Because, people expect they may be in hurry. So,
but Mehmet, this is like the very fucking professional steps that you have to take, that you will learn in time. This is not something that like, we can tell someone and they can just go and do it. This is something you have to first establish yourself. But I think what we should talk about is like, let's say you did all these, and like, what should our approaches should be to have a long-term client, and like, what should be the things that we should be doing. So, for example, like, being dynamic with conversation. Communication.
Be frank, be also rigid. That means, when I say rigid, it doesn't mean, okay, pay me kind of rigid. But when you said, for example, half an hour price is this. So if it is 35 minutes, 40 minutes, you may not say anything. But if it goes to 50 minutes, you immediately say, okay, the rate is now this much. Is that okay with you? You have to be very clear with that. Be friendly. when they ask some revisions, and if it is 1 minute job for you, don't try to charge for it. But if it is half an hour job, 20-minute job, then you immediately tell this is extra for work, sorry. So they know that you are not, like a Sweden or Swiss, everything has to be German, like, anything extra is charged, because then it doesn't become a personal relationship. It becomes totally business. But people like to have some, friendship, especially in our culture. If someone you have a long-term relationship, you go to the same supermarket every day, you know the people, and one day you don't see your wallet, you forget it at home, and he just says, okay, you'll pay it next time.
That's the kind of relationship we're talking about, because even though you never see them face to face maybe, but you're still like, communicating with these people. You're like, there's a give and take. So that's always like, besides the service and the quality of work that you're trying to deliver, like that's also like something really important. Even if you're not really good at it, if you're like really trying your best, and at least you did your best, then you won't have any issues. On the other hand, unless it's like really, something big, that like a lottery that came to you, like Nike or whatever,
In fact, something happened just today. A regular client of mine, we were about to start a project, and he said, I can't activate the project. There's something wrong with Upwork. I said, no fuss, just send me the files. I'll start working on it. And when you are able to sort that, you'll activate the project. But if this guy was a first-time client or even second-time client, I wouldn't do it, because, on Upwork, there are lots of people who would try to do something and then get away with it. So I won't start, working. But at least I had delivered this guy 20 projects to this date. So I know that he's good for it. So I said, okay, no problem. Let's
when the clients are, by the way, US based, that's usually not the case. Like I never encountered one client that was like, trying to rip me off. Usually those are types from like Dubai and, these like different countries.
Don't be, let's say not, racist.
But it's true. Like it's a fact that like I have experienced over and over again, because like work ethics are different. I guess that's like the reason. We already actually like kind of talked about this, but this is also something like you have to, because you can't have a long-term relationship with some people, and you can have a long-term relationship with some people because, like, on the other hand, this guy will push you. He will give you promises, but then just push you, micromanage and just make it hell for you. So you don't want that. Even if that guy paid me like, whatever dollars, I still wouldn't do it. Like,
you are right. Some countries have a tendency to rip you off than some other countries. But I also had cases with North American clients as well. So it's not always true. You have to be vigilant about it. You have to be very, careful about it. Yeah. There is another thing is that you have to be very firm and sometimes relaxed with revisions. That's also something that you can keep a client or leave a client. Revisions always make me tense, because I try to do my best when I deliver a work. And when a revision comes, even my wife is aware of it, because I become tense, because I hate doing the work second time.
I get you. Totally. And those people who ask for like 12 revisions, that's like the guy, that's like hell, because like, some mistakes they can go by, some things may not be just as you like, but something really, really close.
Some clients want to have something exactly how they want it. And I don't like those kind of clients, because in that case, then you do it. If you want
Yeah.
everything, because I have some creative, I should have space. Of course, he has to give me direction, and it's okay with that. But if he just picks every small detail and do this like this, do that like that, then I prefer not to keep those clients for
Yeah,
long term,
those
because
are all. These are all the communication parts. These are all the things that show how it would go or how it's going. But there's also the fact that you have to make sure that the client feels safe,
yeah,
which means that like whenever this client gives you the job, they know for a fact that you're going to deliver because they checked and you've worked
yeah,
for some time and they know now, they know you. So you're beyond the stage where, it goes wrong and you took the next step. So then what?
exactly. As you said, once the client gives you the job, they should forget about it, and when they feel like it, they keep on giving you jobs.
Yeah.
And when also on your side, when you deliver something to your client, maybe at most in 3 revisions, you should know that the project will be accepted if you deliver your highest quality job as you always do. Then you shouldn't worry that the client will go on fourth, fifth, sixth, because those clients are in fact not future proof clients. They are time consuming, and they are not helping you make money, but they are making you lose money.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I prefer not to keep those kind of
So
clients because
yeah,
they are
so
not happy with what
there's
you deliver.
usually like it's obvious, in whatever job you should expect a number of revisions, because like for example, in my job, I'm okay with like you might have missed another thing, and I'll give you like 2 revisions. But yeah, the third one, at least for me, is too much.
Same here. I always limit with 2 revisions, and if they keep on finding new things that were not included in the first 2 revisions, then I get annoyed.
And they're
Seriously
probably
annoyed.
amateurs themselves too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think yeah, it's usually not sustainable with these people anyways, Mehmet. Like, let's talk about the people that we were able to sustain it with and how we were able to do it. And like, for example, you just gave an example where you said, hey, you just got to feel like it's this shop in your neighborhood, and you go, or you're like, oh, I forgot my wallet, blah, blah. And yeah, so this is like I think one of the keys, at least, because like all of my clients, I'm like that. So this gives me an opportunity. So they give you credit, actually. This gives you some credibility. And when you take risks with clients, for example, if you give them an opportunity to trust you, then yeah, they will trust you. But as long as you keep performing, like that's
Exactly. First,
yeah,
the first part of the job is that you should be delivering that
yeah,
high quality work. Afterwards, all the small details comes up. You build the relationship in time. But for example, he says, "Okay, I'll be on holiday these days." When you start first messaging back, you just don't dive into the work again. You say, "How was your holiday?" It's just you
yeah.
start. It doesn't have to be you have to be talking about your personal life, but you start some small talk
Not even
about his
that,
business.
Mehmet.
Yeah.
Not even that. I usually do this. I'm like, hey, quick update. I did this and this, and I'm about to get to this. So even if they came back from holiday, that's actually what they want to hear right there. So when you're kindly, just dropping in there, and that's like service. So, you got to serve in a way, because it is all about service after all. Like everything we're doing is service. So yeah, I think that works. Like I do it, at least.
Also, when I go on holiday, I also tell all my clients, from this day to this day I'll be on holiday. I'll be still reachable, but my time to communicate back to you may not be at the usual, space. So just keep on updated on that. What else? What kind of other things we can do? What do you think? What comes to your mind?
Usually there's also the team. Sometimes you have to work with the team, but not with directly with the client.
Sure.
So you interview with the client and they decide to work with you, but then they're just out of the picture and there's all these people. So as a freelancer, I always like to just put some professionalism in there, be because then you get into this world, this corporate kind of world where there are like hierarchies and people try to treat each other in different kind of ways. So, I always like to take a step back and just let them know, hey, that's not it, So, because, for example, like in these sort of companies, there are a lot of people working. They're all freelancers, but they've been working for a long time. And so there's a hierarchy. And but you're not a part of that because you're a contractor. So that's the important part, that should be your approach, because when you act like an employee, they will treat you like an employee. So, yeah.
Oh, so you also work with a team. You have a team. So how do you involve them as well? How do you introduce them to your clients?
There's Efe, and Efe is on multiple CRMs. And he's also he's my co-editor, but he's also the project manager. So he manages and just distributes everything to everyone. So that's how I introduce him. And then we have this system on Slack that, it's weird because we couldn't do, anything consistent with different things. So we're using Slack like a CRM, and it's just everybody, as long as everybody knows what they're gonna do. So you need one person or two people to just let them know, and that's it.
Also, since you mentioned CRM is also very important, because some clients are very regular. Every month you do work with them, so there's always a regularity. You know what the rates are. But sometimes some clients have seasonality. They come every 3 months. They come every 6 months, and you forget what the last quote you gave to them. So having a kind of database that you can, just check, because you don't want to give them a very low value, or you don't, at least, okay, I had quoted him $500 this month for the same job. I'll be quoting $550, $600, or maybe $500 again. But at least what you have quoted before, or you just don't tell them, okay, this is 400. So your client won't be thinking, oh, I got a very good deal out of him, or in the previous project, he me over.
So today, actually, I got an email, and it's this guy. I kind of remember, but I don't know, because he's a part of a team, and I was working with other people, and this guy came along in the last minute, and it's been months, and he's like, hey, we got this recording, blah, blah, blah. And I owe them money, actually. I owe them $1,000 because they paid up front. So, but I couldn't even remember who it was. So, it's funny. Right now, because so I just got to give them a new price, even though they paid up front, because, I'll just do that, I guess, because they didn't do the episodes, they didn't do the episodes in time, so I gotta raise it.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
We should definitely make an episode how you can take an upfront fee. That's something I lack, I think. I take sometimes upfront, but not as much as you do. I think you're
fucking
much
expert.
better. You're far better on taking
it's like
upfront
loans.
fee.
They give me loans, actually. It's literally they're like, They give me big money, and it feels like I'm taking a loan. So it's funny.
Most freelancers won't believe that it's possible to get upfront fee.
Yeah, like a year worth of upfront
Yeah,
fee.
yeah.
As long as you have a good agreement, as long as you did a great job and had great communication, as long as you did all those, you can do it. Yeah, it's possible. It's very possible, I think.
As I said, it should be another episode for that, because that's a bit more like, financing and how
Yeah,
to
it
raise
is.
your rates. We should do an episode
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, all right.
So
all right.
do you have any other suggestions to make your,
So yeah, quick updates. If you're
Yeah.
gonna be late, just let them know. Hey,
Very important,
apologies, or like
way beforehand.
or if you didn't have the chance, then when you're sending them the work, just let them know. Hey, apologies, for the delay.
But I think it's very important beforehand, because I'll tell a very short story for that, very, very quick one. Last week, I received a message from a client. She's not client, but we've been messaging. I didn't do work for her yet. She's a photographer. She sent her work to a retoucher for a job, and she had 3 days to deliver. It's easily enough. It's 3 images, nothing. But at the end of 3 days, the retoucher told her, "Oh, I was sick," and she messaged me on Sunday, "Can you deliver it on Monday?" I gave her a huge rate, because that meant I would have to stay on Sunday whole day. And she said, I can't afford it. But what she wrote me, I will never work with her again.
But
she
listen,
didn't take me as
but listen, they're not gonna. Okay, so but you're acting as a freelancer here. What I'm talking about is the client, because they're not gonna die if you're like a day late. Usually there are things that you have to be strict with, but there are also things that you can be a little bit more flexible, and they're kind of annoyed by that usually, but. And you can't sustain it if you keep doing it. So you have to fix it at some point. But yeah, there's always some space for the times that you cannot perform well, I guess.
What I would say, for example, let's say you are my client and I know that in 3 days I won't be able to deliver, or I'm sick, really sick, or we don't know what's the case. If I tell you, sorry, Ali, for this time, I won't be able to deliver you in 3 days. Is 5 days okay? Or try someone else for this case?
Yeah, it's not okay. Yani, şimdi bir dakika. So let me give you an example from my end. If I was the client, so say you told me that you would deliver 4 episodes by the end of the week. I'm like, okay, that has to be, that has to be ahead of schedule though. Like you can't kill the deadlines. Like we have a problem if you do, but if you don't, then you give me a promise, and then you don't deliver on time. You're kind of late, or maybe you have to deliver something, and it's kind of flexible at my end. So like I said, if I'm the client, the same thing. There's some space for some negative, some unperforming times, but. Yeah, it's just something that you have to balance at the end of the day.
In podcast, you may be flexible because you have 4 episodes. 1 episode will be, let's say, broadcasted on Monday. But in my end, we have advertisements, and sometimes advertisements are online. And it will be released on Facebook, for example, on Monday to reach a certain sales target. Or the worst, that ad will be printed on a magazine.
That's like a podcast that has to be released like every Monday at 6 a.m. Like we have that. Yeah, I get that. I'm never late with those. Like even last minute, I just let them know, hey, it's coming. I'm on it. If I can't do it, I'll let somebody else do it. So, but that was not what I was talking about. I was talking about, I forgot.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say, If it would be, it was an advertisement imagery. Let's say it's going on print on Monday, and on Sunday you let them know that, okay, I won't deliver it on Monday.
I remember now. I remember. So, for example, let me give you an example, actually, a real one. So I needed some color correction done, right? So the guy is like, the guy, he's Tolga. He's being flexible with me with the payments, right? And he knows that I'm like, flexible, but I'm still trying to like, I have to answer on this side. So he knows that. He knows there's some pressure. So, he was kind of, he said, oh, I'll deliver on Saturday. And then he didn't. But he delivered like 2 days after that. And, I needed it, but it was not a problem to the level that it was going to be a problem. So same with the client. That's how he feels, so that's when you're able to build that relationship, I guess. And it's also, Mehmet, like the culture, the work culture, the ethic, and so on, I guess.
Put yourself as if you are the client yourself, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
If the client will go on print, as I said, and if you tell on Sunday that you won't be able to deliver it, that photographer is the client.
That's the problem. That's the big problem. Yeah, that's a big problem. You have to deliver on time. But I'm talking about the times where, you kind of also can be flexible because there are no like really strict deadlines. So yeah, that's another level. To that level, like if you're doing that, you should be prepared to lose your job because,
that retoucher lost her job. I don't know I'll get it or not because I'm a bit on the expensive side. But it's the way to lose. For example, if it was me, I would rather lose that job, only that job, and tell her at the beginning, if I'm sick, I'll just tell, I won't be able to work, and please find someone else. Or I have someone, that's the way I would do it. I would find someone, make her do it, don't make any money out of it, and just deliver it. I won't be making money out of it, but at least I would have delivered, paid someone else. For her, still, I would have done it.
Yeah, to keep the relationship going, it's really important. Yeah, that's what I've been trying to prepare for this last year, so that when I go for a month, that everything is in its place. And
that's another episode. So the episodes are coming up for different episodes.
Yeah. So we should, I guess,
wrap it up.
Yeah, wrap it up. So yeah, man, we got to set up some emails and we got to do some stuff, because you can't. Yeah, we have a LinkedIn group. People can write onto that LinkedIn group. I'll write under this show notes. And also they can write under the YouTube channel, this episodes, and ask their questions or their comments about this episode. We are trying to learn YouTube. We've been doing podcasts for almost more than a year, but we are new to the YouTube space, so we have a lot to learn. So any feedback is more than welcome. All right. See you next time then.
Yep. Bye-bye.